What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Plus. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about an incredibly bad gaming take coming from the head of Amazon Game Studios. It's the wrong person, right? Like, whenever there's bad gaming takes, look, people have bad takes, I think, all the time. Maybe I've had a bad take or two, but ultimately, we're the small folks, right? When it's the heads of teams, when it's leads, when it's studio bosses, company bosses, when EA's CEO, right? When he says stuff about certain elements of Battlefield or AI, those kind of pique the interest for me more because it's like, well, these people have a lot of control, a lot of power, right? So funny enough, and funny / not funny, this is the same guy, again, head of Amazon Game Studios. I covered just a few hours ago on Podcast Now. He talked about Tomb Raider, and I like what he had to say about it, but he didn't get into this stuff. So he talked about the video game actor strike, right, which is ongoing and not really being talked about all that much. But I think that's probably because it affects so little company. Like, most companies are actually not included in it. And also, it doesn't include certain games. Games, I think, that started, any game that started before, I think, at some point in 2023. So it's really, this has affected games that we don't know about yet, is kind of the basic way. Even like thing like Wolverine or GTA 6, none of these games are affected. Even Wonder Woman, none of these games are affected because it happened too early. It's games that we haven't even had announced yet that this video game strike right now is actually impacting. So I just feel like that's why it's not being talked about. But he had something very interesting to say about literally the acting, and maybe it was a dig. Maybe it was a dig because of the situation going on, but I think it's a terrible, terrible take, even though it doesn't impact every game. We'll read the quote in a second, but it doesn't impact every game, but like a lot of the gaming industry is like what he's saying it's not. It's a very interesting thing that this guy said. So he was asked about it, and he said, I got to be careful what is here because we are a big company and I have to deal with all these organizations, so I don't really want to get in the middle of it. But when we talk about AI, first of all, hopefully it will help us to have new gameplay ideas, which has nothing to do with taking work away from anyone. And especially for games, we don't really have acting. The majority of the team sits in programming, and that's not going to go away because that's all about innovation. If it takes something, it will be really the boring parts. Now, right before then, I actually like what he said. He talked about speeding it up, right? AI speeding it up. He said it could take 5 years per game per AAA studios, leaving those developers constantly trailing behind the current zeitgeist. He said that hopefully AI will help us to streamline processes so hand-done work will go fast. Ideally, we can get it down to 3 years so we can iterate more, which will then bring the budgets down a bit. So let's start there, because a lot of that is actually totally fine. It's something that, AI is a tricky thing, and I've talked about kind of my opinion of it. I'm not like a fan of like robots and stuff, taking over for humans, but the best thing that I can hope for, and I'm not even like in the game development, side of things, but the best thing I can hope for is you work with AI, not AI replaces you. So if you can seamlessly integrate it where you're doing exactly what he says and not a second or not an inch more, right? Where it helps you. It helps cut down time. It doesn't replace anybody. It kind of does the more tedious parts, which would free up people to do other and that, at its heart, that is kind of what he's saying, right? It will allow the people there to innovate, to actually push things forward and let AI take care of really the tedious stuff that does actually right now get taken by, human beings, which slows them down and stops that innovation. That is true. That I agree with. And the issue is if you go 1 inch over, right, now you're replacing people. And that's the muddy part to it. And that's the part that I think some companies, maybe even most companies, are going to take advantage of, right? They'll say, well, if AI can do this, can AI do that? And now all of a sudden we'll just fire a bunch of people and have AI replace them. And that's already kind of happening here and there. Not totally widespread, but it is happening. That's what you don't want to see. But that step right before it is actually kind of the best of both worlds. You want technology's help. You want to decrease the amount of time it takes to make a game. You want to push innovation while basically letting AI do, more of like the tedious stuff. You can make it work. It's just, do you want to make it work? Because you can, just, will you actually do it? So that part I agree with. But when he talks about the acting part, he very much off script there. He, again, the first part is like, okay, well, he sounds like a pretty sensible guy. But the second part is, so in the gaming industry, they don't really do acting. Acting's not really a big part. Now, like, there are plenty of games that don't have like, well, I mean, the days of like silent protagonists are becoming fewer and fewer, right? There's some games where the cast is a little bit more voiced, but maybe the main character isn't. But like a lot of games have acting in it. Like I would argue most games have some form of acting by at least one or two people at the minimum, if not like a full ensemble cast, right? So like that's just plain wrong. And I feel, again, like, is that a dig? And also one of the most like ironic slash funny slash maybe not funny things that's happening is like Amazon, right? So this is the head of Amazon Games. Tomb Raider is like, you know, in affiliation with it. Tomb Raider is like one of, if not their biggest things, right? Again, like I made a video where in the same interview, he talked about Tomb Raider. Does he know that Lara Croft is voiced? Like, you know what I mean? She has a voice. She has a personality, which means there's writers. Now, they might not be good writers, and they may not be good voice actors, and they may not be good performances, but we don't know that. They might also be top-notch. You know what I mean? So it's like, but ultimately, that's not even what he's saying, right? He's not saying voice acting is good or bad, or writers are good or bad in terms of their talent level. He's just saying that it doesn't even exist. You know what I mean? Like acting doesn't happen. Well, number one, I would imagine most games actually do. So I think just statistically he is wrong. And then it's just funny that Tomb Raider is probably the biggest thing, and Tomb Raider is fully voiced. Did you play the trilogy that just came out before it? I'm pretty sure she had a voice. I'm pretty sure other characters could speak, and that there were stories with plots and character. So that, I don't know. I just feel that that's got to be either the most tone-deaf thing I've ever heard, or he's doing it kind of as we don't need acting. Because, I mean, like, what he says after, I guess, makes a little sense, right? Where he's like, well, program, like, you will always need those kind of people. Like, maybe these programmers, like, program the AI eventually, too, right? So it's like they will always kind of be needed to an extent. But it's like, well, writers, like there's always there's a lead writer, there's senior writers, there's tons of writers in any studio. I'm sure that Crystal Dynamics is making Tomb Raider, that I'm sure they've got 10 to 15 different people that are associated with writing in some form. So it's like, are you shunning them too? Because you're not even just shunning also the acting parts. Acting is one part, but you don't have acting if you don't have the writing for those parts. But also, there's motion capture, and there's all of this different stuff that, I mean, it's not even just writers. Well, the people that do the performance capture, what about the people that animate that stuff? You can't animate Lara Croft talking if she's not talking, if there's no words for her to speak. So it's like, I don't know, it's just a really weird thing. I mean, there's other words you could say as well. Really dumb thing to say just overall. I don't really get it. But yeah, that's got to be one of the strangest and most, like, he's on the money for like most of the stuff he's saying, and then he just throws in something that makes absolutely no sense. So I don't really know what happened there, but you let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.